A single anomaly began it all, a quiet flicker hidden in the endless wash of cosmic noise. At first it appeared like any of the countless whispers of static captured nightly by deep space arrays. A technician running a routine calibration on a high-altitude telescope paused when an unexpected set of peaks appeared on the spectrum display. The pattern was too regular to be dismissed as interference, yet too subtle to trigger an automated alert. He saved a snippet, sent a short message to colleagues, and went back to work, unaware that the file he had forwarded would soon reshape the way humanity saw its place in the universe. By morning, the recording had reached a research cluster devoted to monitoring narrowband emissions. Analysts ran standard filters, assuming it would dissolve into noise once properly cleaned. Instead, the shape of the signal sharpened, a series of evenly spaced bursts separated by identical intervals. The clarity invited curiosity. A request went out to stations on other continents to check the same coordinates. Within hours, confirmations arrived from Chile, Australia, and South Africa. The pulse was real, steady, and coming from a fixed point far beyond the solar system. A quiet urgency settled over laboratories as experts assembled through secure channels. They traced the source to a faint star about 200 light-years away, a G-type sun with a handful of rocky worlds. The location alone would not have justified panic, but the structure of the transmission did. Bursts lined up into pairs, triplets, longer runs that suggested design. Hidden between them was a low-frequency undertone, like a breath beneath words. Something out there was not just radiating energy, it was shaping information. The first week passed in a blur of calculations and speculation. Data scientists built visualizations, mapping the intervals as points on spirals and lattices. Mathematicians examined ratios between tones, finding echoes of fundamental constants. The hydrogen line, the speed of light in vacuum, even Planck's length rendered in clever fractional forms. Linguists joined, noting that the use of such constants could create a universal reference frame. Whoever or whatever had sent the message understood that only shared truths could cross interstellar gulfs. The prospect inspired an informal coalition that reached beyond government walls. University professors worked beside defense engineers. Hobbyist astronomers donated telescope time, and programmers offered machine learning models to test hypotheses. They formed a distributed brain, chasing meaning across time zones. Despite cultural differences, the group shared a single pulse of excitement, the possibility that another intelligence had decided to speak. As decoding progressed, personalities began to shine. One researcher became known for elegant visual metaphors, comparing the signal to a folded ribbon waiting to be unfurled. Another championed statistical rigor, demanding every assumption be proven against random chance. Among them, two figures rose as steady voices of synthesis. Lena, a radio astronomer with a gift for intuition, sensed patterns before equations caught up. Raj, a systems theorist, excelled at converting hunches into models. Together they balanced instinct and structure, giving the project a rhythm of insight and proof. After hundreds of iterations, the team separated the transmission into layers. The first was a simple series of prime numbers, a greeting written in the mathematics of indivisible entities. The second used modulated amplitude to sketch relationships between stellar masses and atomic weights. At the edge of audibility, a third stratum pulsed like a heartbeat. Raj suggested amplifying it through adaptive filters. When they did, a geometric map unfolded on screens, arcs tracing orbits around a star, a highlighted path leading toward a particular planet. The coordinates matched the one already identified by telescopes, but now there was confirmation. The message was pointing at its own origin. That breakthrough sent waves through the community. Some argued for caution, wary of drawing conclusions before all possibilities of natural origin were exhausted. Others felt the evidence had crossed an invisible threshold. Nature rarely wrote in primes or pointed at specific worlds. Debates filled midnight calls and encrypted chats. Yet beneath the noise a sense of wonder persisted. The cosmos, once assumed indifferent, appeared to be winking. While policy officials prepared statements, the technical effort widened. High-performance clusters combed through terabytes of raw feed hunting for hidden symmetries. Amateur codebreakers suggested parallels with compression algorithms. A retired mathematician proposed viewing the message as a three-dimensional object rather than a timeline. That perspective uncovered rotational relationships between segments, as if the signal were a sculpture encoded in sound. Each insight deepened appreciation for the minds behind the emission. They had not chosen brute clarity. They had chosen elegance, demanding that listeners stretch themselves. The puzzle felt less like an announcement and more like an invitation, an exam testing whether humanity possessed patience and creativity enough to join a larger conversation. As pieces aligned, a picture formed. At its heart lay a short repeating unit, bracketed by longer sequences that changed subtly each cycle. Lena hypothesized it might contain metadata about descending civilization, count of population equivalents, catalogs of spectral lines, maybe even a schematic of anatomy encoded through ratios. They could not yet read the content, but its organization carried intention, suggesting senders who valued order yet left room for interpretation. Curiosity spilled beyond laboratories into the public sphere despite official efforts at discretion. Leaked fragments found their way onto forums where enthusiasts speculated wildly. Proof of benevolent watchers, warning from an ancient machine, lure from something predatory. Memes flourished, parodying first contact protocols. Amid humor ran genuine fascination, a collective itch to peer over the cosmic fence. Inside the core team, work pressed forward. They refined algorithms, running them through nights that stretched until dawn. Complex diagrams covered walls, layered with equations and sketches of possible alien numerals. The excitement was not free from fatigue. Eyes reddened, tempers occasionally flared, yet collaboration endured. They felt part of a story larger than any one career, perhaps larger than the species itself. Toward the end of the second month, Raj's program achieved a tentative partial translation. The prime number header led into instructions describing a physical constant, followed by diagrams of waveforms arranged into a helix. Cross-reference with biological data suggested parallels with DNA's double-stranded geometry. The realization silenced the room. Someone across the abyss understood life not merely as chemistry, but as a universal phenomenon worth referencing. That recognition shifted the atmosphere from curiosity to gravity. If the message acknowledged shared biology, then the intention must be deeper than a mere beacon. It might represent outreach, a declaration of kinship across unimaginable distance. The implication demanded wisdom equal to discovery. Leaders of the effort urged restraint, reminding colleagues that meaning must be approached with discipline, not enthusiasm alone. The moment analysts confirmed that the alien signal referenced Earth's own chemistry, a quiet shift occurred among the people studying it. Until then, their work had felt like an elaborate puzzle or a thrilling chase through mathematics. Now it had the weight of an encounter. The senders were not only aware of physics, but seemed to expect empathy, imagination, and a willingness to engage. Silence could no longer be a neutral stance. It risked becoming a refusal to acknowledge the outstretched hand of another intelligence. Meetings grew more deliberate. Specialists reviewed every decoded element and debated how a message back might be composed. The first problem was scale. A reply had to travel across nearly 200 light-years, remain coherent after decades in flight, and carry meaning that no cultural filter could distort. Even the simplest answer demanded technology and unity beyond anything humankind had previously attempted. International agencies agreed to coordinate under a single charter dedicated to interstellar dialogue. The phrase felt audacious, but it captured the mood. Delegates set ground rules. No hint of aggression, no proprietary ownership of data, no inclusion of information that could enable destructive misuse if misunderstood. They also decided the reply must represent the whole species, not just governments or academic elites. Artists, teachers, engineers, and students were invited to submit ideas for what Earth's first deliberate interstellar statement might contain. While discussions unfolded, engineers assessed how to transmit across such distance. Conventional radio would disperse before reaching its target. Lasers offered focus but required unprecedented stability and power. A proposal emerged from a consortium developing orbital solar reflectors. The unfinished array, intended to drive experimental spacecraft, could be repurposed into a transmitter of breathtaking precision. By arranging thousands of mirrors into a synchronized pattern, sunlight could be concentrated and pulsed into a narrow beam bearing digital information. Funding and political will surged as soon as the concept proved mathematically sound. Cargo craft delivered new actuators, thermal shields, and adaptive optics to the incomplete platforms circling Earth. Workshops that once fabricated satellite parts began machining components for a structure designed to whisper across the galaxy. The project attracted volunteers from every discipline. Linguists writing symbolic lexicons, computer scientists encoding them into light-pulse sequences, acoustic designers exploring how to compress simple melodies into binary harmonics. The entire venture became a living proof of what humans could accomplish when a horizon large enough captured their imagination. Lena joined the orbital integration team, bringing her instinct for patterns to the challenge of signal design. Her task was to ensure the outgoing stream mirrored the elegance of the message they had received. Layers that began with shared constants, then unfolded toward richer glimpses of the sender's culture. Raj, meanwhile, led a small group refining the mathematical grammar to wrap around images, formulas, and snippets of human art. They spoke often over a secure channel, comparing notes and debating whether humor or poetry had a place in a greeting destined to travel longer than any civilization had yet existed. As components locked into place around the equator of the array, excitement mingled with caution. Philosophers warned against overloading the reply with autobiographical detail, arguing that vulnerability should be balanced with prudence. Biologists recommended presenting Earth's diversity without romanticizing it, demonstrating that cooperation coexisted with conflict, but that progress depended on empathy. A handful of skeptics questioned whether any response was wise, yet their concerns gradually softened in the presence of a shared drive to meet the unknown with curiosity rather than fear. Construction reached a milestone when the lattice of mirrors aligned into a flawless disk spanning kilometers. From the ground, it looked like a faint halo gliding through twilight, but on board, the control module technicians monitored instruments with quiet reverence. They were building not a weapon or telescope, but a voice capable of spanning generations. Every adjustment, every calibration, felt like polishing syllables for a sentence that must speak for billions. Parallel to hardware efforts, the message itself took shape. Teams distilled the essential patterns discovered in the incoming broadcast. Primes, ratios, maps of atomic structures. They added universal references to gravity, motion, and chemistry. Beside these fundamentals, they encoded traces of life. The geometry of DNA, sketches of photosynthesis, graphs of planetary climates. Musicians arranged a short chord progression simple enough to survive compression, but rich enough to suggest an emotional dimension. Linguists crafted symbolic notations for concepts like friendship, curiosity, and caution, ensuring no single spoken language dominated. Testing phases unfolded across sleepless weeks. Light bursts flickered through vacuum tunnels and over mountain observatories, verifying synchronization between data blocks and the mirror's choreography. Even small misalignments risked scattering the beam into harmless starlight. Engineers adopted rituals before each rehearsal, murmuring quiet counts as if rehearsing for an orchestra about to play a premiere none of them would live to hear answered. Finally, the day of transmission arrived. The orbital platform rotated into a calculated orientation, mirrors tilting until they caught dawn sunlight. Below, control centers distributed across continents joined a common feed. No speeches were scheduled. Everyone understood history required focus, not ceremony. A steady voice read coordinates, checksum values, and command codes. At the mark, the array ignited, sculpting sunlight into a tight lance invisible except to instruments tuned for it. Within the beam pulsed the sum of months of human effort, a structured greeting woven from mathematics, art, and goodwill. Relief washed over teams once the final checksum matched expectations. Applause broke out, subdued at first, then louder as reality settled in. Across every boundary of language or allegiance, humans had spoken beyond their cradle for the first time with intention. They had sent evidence of thought, craft, and longing far beyond the warmth of their own star. The elation slowly gave way to reflection. The message would take centuries to reach its destination, and any reply would travel equally long. Many involved would never see the result, yet none considered the act futile. Meaning was not confined to immediate payoff. It resided in the willingness to connect despite odds. That awareness bonded participants more deeply than professional pride alone. Hours after transmission, monitoring stations reported subtle deviations in the source signal. Its steady rhythm wavered, then resumed with inflections unlike any measure before. Analysts debated whether equipment errors or astrophysical events might explain the shift. Re-examination of raw data ruled out technical faults. The conclusion crept through conversations. The senders had registered Earth's attempt and were adjusting their broadcast. Around conference tables and in private messages, excitement mixed with caution. Some predicted a straightforward acknowledgement. Others envisioned a complex test of understanding.